on TV, online, and on your smartphone. This is Ticker News.
This episode of Talk Your Book is proudly brought to you by Honan, providing a complete range of insurance, risk, and financial solutions.
Fundies called me up, told me to take a look, but stay stubborn as bulls and talk their own book. Get the money, get the money, get the money.
Hi, I'm Chris Judd, and this is Talk Your Book. And today we're very lucky to be joined by Emanuel Datt from Datt Capital, who's very much a crowd favourite amongst Talk Your Book viewers. Emanuel, thanks very much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us again, Chris.
And what stock did you want to talk about today?
So today I wanted to talk about WA1 Resources, and they are a niobium exploration company that are listed on the ASX.
And talk me through their market cap and maybe the helicopter view about what they are and where their assets are held.
Yeah, sure. So WA1, they're a fairly fresh listing. I think they just IPO'd early last year. And so they basically a niobium, or they've just made a niobium discovery in Western Australia in a remote region called the West Arunta. They've really managed to discover just niobium, for those that don't know, is a very rare and very critical mineral, and about 90% of global supply actually comes from one mine in Brazil.
Maybe talk us through some of the use cases for it, because when you look at the future-facing products that people are broadly excited about as investors, it sort of hits a lot of those genres.
Oh, absolutely. So the primary use of niobium is in high-strength, low-alloy steel. What that means is that it's steel where a small additive is used. So in niobium's case, you only need about 300 grams of niobium added to a ton of steel, and that actually reduces the weight required by about 20 to 30%. So effectively, you can use much thinner steels in construction, let's say. And as we know, weight equals cost in construction or any other sort of manufacturing process. So, it's got some very niche applications at the moment. That's really a result of the supply concentration that I sort of mentioned. But we expect that as supply is diversified, potentially through this company that I'm talking about today, we expect the penetration rate of use in the steel industry itself to increase over time.
So things like space, high temperature products, things like nuclear industry uses it, MRI machines. It's got quite a diverse range of products already, with the potential to build that out as supply potentially increases.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be, it can be applicable to any sort of steel, basically. So even, steel that's used in construction, in buildings, for example. Weight equals cost ultimately.
Yeah.
If you have significantly lighter steels, then obviously you don't need as much perhaps foundational work or as much craneage, costs and all that sort of thing, and transportation costs as well. So I think that it really does tick a lot of boxes for us. But in addition, there's also the big sort of what I like to call the moonshot angle, that the scientists have actually discovered recently, that the addition of niobium in various electric batteries actually reduces the charge time of batteries to about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, wow.
Down from, I think it takes about an hour to charge the battery of an EV, for example. And I think that is going to be a very, very significant breakthrough if we as a society are trying to achieve, a greater penetration of EVs. I don't drive an EV, for example, because I don't want to be sort of planning,
It's a pain point, isn't it, still?
Yeah, it's a real pain point. I'd rather go and fill my car up. It takes a couple of minutes, standing at a petrol pump. So I think that when that time is compressed in terms of recharging capability, I think that's, ultimately something that government will encourage. And but of course, that this sort of technology is still at the lab level, so it's still.
And it takes time, doesn't it? Because those supply chains, those manufacturing capex has already been spent, so you don't get a battery chemistry change immediately, do you? But 10 years' time is a short period of time, really, in the,
or
the big
even
scheme
less.
of things.
I think that we'll probably see, probably major breakthroughs in that particular technology as they're sort of in the process of scaling it up. So I'd probably say 1 to 2 years will really get a good indication about whether it's feasible and whether it scales and translates to a commercial scale. But it should be very exciting either way, even without that angle. I think there's plenty of scope for the use of niobium in the steel industry to go up by multiples, assuming there's more diversified sources of supply.
And who are the people behind WA1 Resources?
Yeah, sure. So WA1 Resources, the CEO is a guy called Paul Savage, and his other sort of executive director is the geologist Tom Lyons. So both these guys have a long history working in the very remote West Arunta region, and I emphasize very remote because it really is sort of the middle of nowhere, and very little infrastructure, very difficult terrain and conditions. So basically, the team have sort of been in the area working for what I'd call sister companies, if you would. And I think that having a really good relationship, for example, with the local suppliers, but also local traditional owners is really critical to work in these remote regions. You don't want to have obstacles in the middle of nowhere because they're hard to solve ultimately and expensive to solve. So so I think the team are very well qualified to run this company and bring it to fruition, whatever that may be.
And you mentioned the supply concentration of niobium currently, with more than 90% produced out of Brazil. Talk us through that and how you view that, if you think that's an opportunity, and that if there was more supply, it sounds like you think more products could be developed and the demand's there, or if you get nervous that increased supply in a small market could crunch the price and make a wildly profitable mine look less profitable all of a sudden.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll probably talk about the main niobium product, which is a product called ferroniobium. Typically comes in a range of niobium percentages, probably about 64 to 65% spec is typical. And niobium is only produced from 3 mines globally. So it's a pretty crazy statistic. That's dominated by the Araxa mine. Sorry, I'm not a native Portuguese speaker, so you have to
I suspect none of the viewers are either, so you'll be very safe.
But that's like absolutely, world-class deposit, 400 odd million tons at a grade of 2.5% niobium. The other 2 mines are very ancillary, I guess. They're sort of commercializing deposits of about 0.5% or thereabouts niobium. So as I mentioned, Araxa makes up about very close to 90% of global supply.
And then there's a few other mines being explored / developed around the place currently as well, besides WA1?
Other deposits do exist, but none are being commercialized to my knowledge at the moment. And so sorry, just going back to the ferroniobium product, it's a very expensive product ultimately, just given the lack of supply out there. So just to give you an idea, it's about $45,000 US for a ton of this ferroniobium product. So very expensive. So
but you only need a little bit of it in the steel to have a transformational impact.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds expensive, but when you actually consider how much is needed per ton of steel, translating it back to a dollar value, it's a very small amount, basically.
And talk to us about some of the drill results they've seen and what a high-grade niobium drill hit looks like, and what WA1 have achieved so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have achieved some very broad, they've achieved, I'll rewind it back a little bit to explain about their deposit. So niobium is found in carbonatites, which is a particular geological feature. In terms of the deposit itself, so basically there's a very thin, flat, high-grade body that lies on top of a larger but lower-grade deposit.
We'll be right back with more Talkie Book after this short break.
On TV, online, and on your smartphone. This is Ticker News.
This episode of Talk Your Book is proudly brought to you by Honan, providing a complete range of insurance, risk and financial solutions.
Fundies called me up, told me to take a look, but stay stubborn as bulls and talk their own book. Get the money, get the money, get the money.
This is Talk Your Book, and we're lucky to be joined with Emanuel Datt. Emanuel, we'll just pick up where we left off from, just around the geology of the WA1 deposit.
Yeah, sure. So as I was saying, there's a very shallow, high-grade section of the deposit, and ultimately that is what we are looking to see, because ultimately, you know, you're working in a remote region, you need the deposit to be or have a sufficiently high grade, which ensures that, you know, the front end capital can be repaid back quickly and make it stand up as an economic proposition itself. So we believe WA1 do have that, given the carbonatite that they've been exploring has quite a significant, or it's been explored over quite a significant area. So I believe the drill program currently covers about 3K by about 1.5K. So, you know, assuming that all comes in, I think that this will stand up as a very strong proposition to be commercialized in time. So
it's still open at depth so far?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But look, I think that going back to the point that, you know, the shallow, high-grade portion of the deposit is what they'd be looking to monetize.
Yeah.
As we've seen with Linus and Mount Weld, for example, they've probably got a mine life of hundreds of years there. And I have no doubts that this may be, you know, a similar case, but ultimately you're trying to, you know, scoop the cream off the top, if you would, first. And that's going to give you the best return, ultimately.
Just going to reduce how much you've got to dilute shareholders if you can get that early payback.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It increases your likelihood of have some debt facility around the project as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the Australian government is great in that way. You know, there's lots of various loan schemes like NAIF, which covers Northern Australian infrastructure, which, the project falls within the region where this may be applicable. Of course, you know, that's somewhat down the line, given that we're still sort of in the process of defining the mineral resource itself and what it may hold. And then you obviously have to go through various studies before you can really apply for that project finance.
And it sounds like plenty of drill results to come. When are you expecting the mineral resource estimate to be out?
I believe the company are targeting Q4 of this year, so, you know, sometime between October to December. They're just going like a bat out of hell, to be honest. So I think it ultimately comes down to how quickly the assays come back out of the lab. But yeah, I think that, you know, that's going to obviously be the first, a big step to crystallize some firm value and really put it on the radar of larger companies, because I think ultimately this resource is so good and so unique that it's quite unique it would be quite unique if the company was to take this through to commercialization by itself. You know, I think the company, they're capitalized at about 300 odd million as of today, probably maybe slightly over 320, 330, something like that.
Moves around pretty quickly.
But when you consider the in situ value of what we expect the in situ value of the resource itself, it's like, you know, quite incredible. And of course, considering the future facing elements and the scarcity value as well, it's just a really highly strategic resource in a tier 1 jurisdiction. Yeah. The world's best mining jurisdiction, in fact. Yeah.
And $10 million raised by the company in May, I believe, from Regal.
Yeah.
How long are you expecting that money, along with their existing cash, before that to last?
Yeah, sure. So I believe they've got about 20 mil in the bank as of the last quarterly. And, you know, they're obviously spending money on the drill rigs. And, I believe that should get us through to probably about mid next year. There's obviously a lot of other workflows like metallurgy, which is basically seeing if you can extract the metal content from the rock itself. And we've seen early encouraging signs that it is possible. But of course, it warrants further study and a process. Further studies towards commercialization, I like to think of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, being an explorer, we'll have to raise money at some stage. But what that looks like, I think they've got sufficient runway, to really add more value. It's pretty incredible to think that I believe they raised $5 million an IPO, and they were capped at about 15 or 20 mil. And they've really created a huge amount of value in a very short amount of time when you consider they capped at just over 300 mil and have 20 odd mil in the bank. And yeah, it's quite incredible.
It's a brilliant story. Emanuel Datt, as I mentioned, crowd favourite of all the people I have on. You and probably Tom Lambert, the most requested I get to come back on. So there'll be plenty of people wrapped that you made the time for us today, and really appreciate you sitting down with us and walking us through the story.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having us, Chris.